Believe it or not, Phase 5 of the MCU quietly wrapped up a few weeks ago. Yeah, the phases just kind of end now without an event to cap them off. It's weird, right? Starting all the way back in 2023 with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania and ending with 2025's Ironheart, Marvel Studios released a grand total of 16 projects during that period. From live-action movies and shows to an expansion into animation, the MCU hit some of its highest highs and all-time lows over the last few years. Now that it's all said and done, I wanted to take a look back at Marvel's most controversial phase and rank each entry in a retrospective to see if it was really as much of a mixed bag as it seems. But here's the thing, some quick parameters before we get started. If it's included under the Multiverse Saga tab on Disney+, it's eligible to be ranked. So that means no Lego movies. I'm sorry to disappoint all 6 of you. Also, I'm gonna rank every phase at the end of this video, so get excited for that, I guess. There's your hook to keep watching. Please. I'll beg. Okay, let's just get started already because we have a lot to talk about. Coming in at number 16 is, unsurprisingly, Secret Invasion. Now, I was told if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all, so I'm gonna move on to the next one. Number 15, okay, I'm not actually gonna do that, don't worry. Where to even begin with a show like Secret Invasion? I don't actively hate any MCU project, but Secret Invasion absolutely comes the closest to that for me, as it's the only one that I dislike. I've never been more disappointed in my life watching a Marvel series than with this. Taking such an interesting concept with the Skrulls, something that should have spanned the entirety of Phase 4 in my opinion, and condensing it down into a 6-episode series that spins its wheels, unceremoniously kills off characters, maybe watch Nick Fury kiss a Skrull wife for an uncomfortable amount of time, and has the worst ending in MCU history. And that's not even taking into consideration that disgusting AI intro. There was so much promise in this show, and it's not even like it's entirely all bad. I think the first episodes are pretty fine, then nothing happens in episode 5, only for the finale to take the biggest nosedive in quality I've ever seen. So I can't help but just feel extreme disappointment when thinking about this show. It is the epitome of everything that was wrong with Phase 5 of Marvel, as the project was reshot to hell and back, had $8 and a week to do all the CGI, and just didn't get nearly enough attention that it deserved from the studio. It is far and away the worst thing Marvel Studios has ever released, and I hope it stays that way because, good God, I don't think you could make a show this bad if you tried. It really sucks to see what happened with Secret Invasion because they wasted an all-star cast on this, and then finally started the promised paranoia in the final few minutes of the episode. There are so many baffling behind-the-scenes decisions that I can't even fathom them deciding were good ideas, and I'm not even that mad it didn't adapt to the event from the comics. I don't think it's very good, so I'm all here for change, but at least try and make that change interesting instead of whatever this was. God, I'm gonna get a headache talking about the lost potential of this show, so let's just move on to the next one because I could yap about Secret Invasion's disappointment for hours on end. Up next at number 15 is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, a movie that I think is okay to fine, but has probably aged as the biggest problem in Marvel Studios history. Honestly, above everything else, my biggest problem with this movie is just how it looks. I completely understand that this movie was shot during the pandemic, but I feel like the visuals of the quantum realm just don't work at all for me, and when the entire movie is set down there, it's gonna be hard to look at. The weird purplish-brown aesthetic they go for just isn't appealing to me. And also, when you set the entire movie in the quantum realm, you lose that sense of scale that makes Ant-Man so interesting as a character, because you have shots like this where he's supposed to be taller than ever, but you don't feel the significance of it because he is in such a weightless void with nothing that we can compare him to. And then obviously there's the whole Kang problem with it, where Marvel decided to not only hedge all of their bets on Kang by making literally every variant of him in the multiverse look like a man who was convicted of assault and harassment, but this movie did irreparable damage to the character of Kang the Conqueror because he lost to Ant-Man. And while I personally don't think it hurts the character too much because there are infinite versions of him and that's what makes him threatening, I won't deny that the end of this film was pretty underwhelming. The Ant-Fams dynamic can only carry this movie so much because I think it takes a big dip in quality right when they go into the quantum realm. That being said, this movie gave us Hank Pym's socialist ants and Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, so I can never say that I hate it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more as Catherine as Cassie because I think that she has the potential to be truly great casting with just better material to work with. Quantumania probably killed the Ant-Man franchise forever, which sucks because I think that it has so much potential, but they decided to throw away the fun heist format for a high-stakes, universe-altering movie when I don't think that was the Ant-Man movie's strong suit at all. But hey, at least we had this guy that looks like broccoli. I think about him a lot. And also MODOK's bare butt. I'm never gonna be able to unsee that. And now you won't either. Coming in at number 14, we have Season 2 and 3 of What If. I decided to put both of these together because they're part of the same project, and I have the exact same points to talk about for both of them. What If is such a bizarre show to talk about because despite getting some genuinely great episodes throughout its entire run, I don't think it ever lived up to its full potential, and then they just decided to end it after season 3, despite the fact that this could have ran forever. And things had just started to get interesting too, as they finally introduced Multiverse Saga characters, and we got to see them in some really exciting scenarios. But for every great episode that has Mysterio ruling over the world, or Kahorti reshaping it, we get an undercooked episode like Mech Avengers, or one of the forced team-ups they always threw in at the end. What If should have been something special as this Elseworlds anthology series that lets us see different outcomes of our favorite MCU projects. But instead of that, it often feels like a show that played things way too safe and was used more as a vehicle for silly storytelling than actually exploring alternate timelines where things could have ended differently, along with the fact that the art style was pretty hit or miss outside of a few gorgeous shots they'd throw in there. I honestly just get bummed out talking about What If because this should have been a really fun show, and while it does definitely have its moments, especially when cowgirl Kate Bishop is on screen, hello, it's just another example of wasted potential and something that was cut off way too soon. I'm very glad that it exists and that it gave us some very interesting concepts, but man, this could have been so much more. If only they had pondered the question, what if we did something genuinely exciting with this show? Up next at number 13 is... I'm reading that I Am Groot Season 2 released in Phase 5? That feels like a lifetime ago, but okay, I guess it's on the list. I don't really have much to say about I Am Groot because it's just a collection of cute little shorts, but it's exactly what it needs to be, and I had a fun time watching them, so good for I Am Groot. You got the job done. I will say, I know pretty much everybody here didn't watch I Am Groot, but if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, I need you to go watch the episode where the Watcher cameos in it. Seeing him angrily narrate over Groot's cosmic chaos is something I never knew I needed in my life, and genuinely one of the funniest things the MCU has ever done. I would watch 20 more seasons of that alone. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about I Am Groot. It's fun. I would honestly use this show as a baseline going forward in this ranking, that everything after that I think is good. So let's go talk about that stuff. Number 12 is one entirely fueled by my own bias, that being Captain America Brave New World. I've never hidden the fact that Captain America is my favorite character of all time, so naturally I really enjoyed this film. That being said, I want to get this out of the way right up top. It is far from perfect. Part of the reason it doesn't crack the top 10 is that this movie should have been so much more. For Sam Wilson's first outing as Captain America on the big screen, I absolutely think he deserved better. And while they reshot the action scenes to try and improve the final product, it came out as just good. There were unnecessary characters and glaring green screen issues in this political thriller that didn't really take a political stance. But despite all that, I still have a great time watching this movie. It is so rewarding to finally see my favorite character take the spotlight like this and be positioned as the rightful leader of the Avengers. I love everything they do with Sam's character as we get to see him step up and take on a whole new level of responsibility, grappling with this idea that he's not good enough as he starts to feel the pressure of the weight of the world on his shoulders. I think he has a satisfying journey that builds off the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier in a natural way. If he wasn't already before, this movie goes out of its way to cement Anthony Mackie as the Captain America going forward, making him more than just a silly side character and someone who is actually able to carry a movie, working as this everyman hero who approaches things through empathy. Sam Wilson is absolutely the heart of this movie, and that meant a lot to me to see. And I absolutely adore the way he fights, whether it be the hand-to-hand combat where we get to see him hold his own in really creative situations, or flying around and using his wings in very exciting ways. I think they do some really cool things to differentiate his action from Steve's, and because of that it makes him stand out. And I can't say enough good things about this partnership he has with Joaquin. I love seeing Sam step up into that mentor position for once, as it's now his responsibility to look after Joaquin. And obviously, considering that he was the big focal point of the film's marketing, I think the Red Hulk is used incredibly well in the film, treating him as this powder keg that's about to blow throughout the entire course of the movie. And then when he finally transforms, we get this really tense action scene between him and Sam. So while Brave New World didn't live up to my expectations, and I wish that Sam Wilson could have gotten a better film, I still really enjoyed it and think it is a solid start for this new era of Captain America on the big screen, and I am just praying that Marvel gives him a second chance with more time to actually craft a perfect story for him that doesn't have just a little too many Hulk elements. Yo, it's the guy who looks like broccoli again. Up next at number 11 is Echo, the first show Marvel decided to dump on streaming, but one that I genuinely think is good. Alaqua Cox is one of the unsung heroes of the MCU, and I truly mean that. Her casting is almost impossibly good. It's like they shook an Echo comic and she fell out of it. I really feel like we don't give them enough credit for casting her in this role because she is electric on screen. Through just her facial expression and body language alone, she's able to convey so much emotion, but I also love how much of her own stunts she's doing in scenes. You can tell that she has a clear passion and dedication to this character, and it completely comes through on screen. I especially love her dynamic with the Kingpin in this show. They have such an interesting back and forth as he basically became her surrogate father. Watching that unravel over these episodes is genuinely interesting, and I think they have a great back and forth together. Vincent D'Onofrio, as always, does incredible work in this show, and portrays him as probably the most sympathetic we're ever going to see the Kingpin. And my god, is this show incredibly gorgeous. It does not get nearly enough appreciation for how pretty it looks. The color grading is to die for. They did such a great job crafting a visual style for this show, and I really respect the way they were able to reinvent the Echo character for the MCU. As much as I do miss seeing her as someone with photogenic reflexes, I think the way they embrace her culture and tie it into this new meaning for the character is genuinely touching, and works really well to establish her in her own corner of the universe. For me, where Echo falters is the fact that this show is only 5 episodes long, especially considering that episode 1 is basically a recap show. So there's kind of only 4 episodes in the series when you put it that way. This show, especially in that finale, feels incredibly rushed. While I enjoy the action in the show, especially that Daredevil cameo, that is without a doubt the best cameo in the entire MCU, as they use it to establish his place in the universe and show just how much of a badass Maya is. It doesn't make up for the fact that this show needed more time to showcase this talented cast. Coming in now at number 10 is The Marvels, a movie that I think is genuinely great, and if you disagree, I will fight you in the parking lot. Despite the fact that this film has the worst timing ever as it debuted right at the very end of a historic actor and writer strike, I think it deserved so much better. You could never make me hate The Marvels. The only real problems I have with the film is the fact that you could tell it was butchered in the editing room. There are entire sequences on Aladdin that were cut out that I am still dying to see to this day. Listen, some of you might think it's cheesy, but A Musical Planet is right up my alley, and I am so mad we didn't get to see the rest of it. Or any of the dozens of other scenes they cut out of this film to bring it in at an hour and 45 minutes. Dar Ben is without a doubt the biggest victim of this, as she feels incredibly undercooked as a villain. I think her motivation is very interesting, but we never get to dive into her character outside of a surface level glance. Thankfully, the sheer charisma and character dynamics between Carol, Monica, and Kamala is more than enough to carry this movie to 4 stars for me. I think their interactions are so much fun, and I love what they do with all these characters, especially Carol Danvers. This is without a doubt the best she has ever been written in the MCU, as we get to see her be this distant mess personally, and someone who just ran away from her problems, now being forced to confront them when she gets linked with Monica. And the quantum entanglement is such a great gimmick for the film. Not only is it a very natural way to bring these characters together, but it leads to some of the best action scenes in the entire MCU, and I will die on this hill. It forces all 3 of these characters to use their powers in really creative ways, as we're cutting back and forth between different fight scenes, and we're seeing people like Kamala getting taken completely out of her depth. And also, there's no such thing as a bad project with Iman Vellani in it. She lights up every scene she's in, and I want them to make at least 50 more movies with her in them. I love this movie, and I am so mad there is this hate campaign against it because I think it is truly great and deserves so much more appreciation. It is a creative and beautifully cosmic film that I will never stop praising. I mean, come on, it even put Kate Bishop in a movie. Completely ignoring all the other amazing stuff it does, it is great for that alone. If The Marvels has no fans, then I'm dead. Coming in at number 9 is Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Finally, we've made it to one of the animated shows on this list. What's so interesting about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is that it's basically Marvel Studios showing us what they would have done if they had the full rights to Spider-Man, and I think it is such a fascinating case study to see this what-if timeline, directly spinning off of the events from Civil War and replacing Tony Stark with Norman Osborn. I love how we see Peter's character develop differently because of it, as Norman is ever so subtly pushing him down the wrong path to let loose and do what needs to be done, as Peter sheds that happy-go-lucky charm as the series progresses, giving him a much-needed edge, as he butts heads with this very suave and sassy take on Norman Osborn, expertly played by Coleman Domingo. If Marvel knows ball, they'll make him Norman Osborn in live action, because this casting is way too good to be restricted to an animated show. But without a doubt, my favorite thing about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is honestly Tombstone, which all these months later, I still can't process. The new take they've done on Lonnie to make him a friend of Peter and mirror their journeys as they both have completely different perspectives on responsibility is such a great theme to focus on for the show, and I think they handle it expertly. And while I don't love the changes to Peter's origin story as he gets bitten by a spider that was from the future and Uncle Ben dies before he ever even becomes Spider-Man, I do think it's very interesting to explore a what-if story where Peter never gets that with great power, there must also come great responsibility pep talk. And because of that, he is clearly lost in life without Ben's words of wisdom and looking for someone to guide him. And over the course of this series, we get to see him find that moral compass for himself. And one last thing, but I really love how this show looks. I think the inspiration of those 60s designs from the original Spider-Man comics blended with 3D animation goes incredibly hard and gives all of the action and web swinging a lot of depth that feels like a nice compromise between both styles. Throw in some kinetic editing that makes it feel like a comic book come to life, and I am completely sold. This show really surprised me, and I can't wait to see more of what they're cooking up next year. It's really nice to have a new ongoing Spider-Man show again. I feel like we've needed a good one of those for a few years. I just have to hope that they brutally kill off Screwball next season because I cannot stand her. Okay, she ruined my life in those Insomniac games, and I will never forgive her for that. Then at number 8, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. Despite what people on Twitter say, I really like this movie. I'm not falling for the anti-Deadpool and Wolverine propaganda, okay? This movie is genuinely great and I will stand by that, which, isn't really a hot take considering most people like this movie, but it's a lot of fun. I am not immune to nostalgia. I popped off like crazy seeing all those references on screen. Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine and finally wearing that yellow spandex was an incredible thing to experience in a packed theater opening night. I would even go as far as to say that this is the best he's ever done playing Wolverine. Logan doesn't count on the technicality of him not being Wolverine in that movie, but he's doing some of the best work of his entire career here playing a deeply troubled version of Wolverine. Someone who is more than happy to spend the rest of his life drinking himself to death until Deadpool shows up and pulls him out of retirement. It goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Hugh and Ryan have such incredible chemistry together. I could watch an entire movie of just them bantering back and forth. It is so much fun to watch them fight and bicker and fight and argue and fight all throughout the course of the movie as they are basically tasked with saving the multiverse. And with a character like Deadpool who can so easily walk the line between beloved and annoying, I'm very glad that they continue to lean into the sad clown aspect of the character where he is this broken, beaten down person that clearly uses humor as a coping mechanism as he struggles to find his place in a world that doesn't even want him. I would say that the only shortcomings of Deadpool and Wolverine for me are the fact that I don't think it's shot very well. The muted colors don't really do much to me. I appreciate that it helps the suits pop more on screen, but it's not the best to look at, and I do think the movie could have used some more time to flesh out Wolverine and actually show us things rather than telling us over and over again. I feel like there's a lot of exposition dumping in the film. Still though, despite that, this movie is an absolute joy to watch. It is hilarious in so many ways. I don't know if Marvel is ever going to top that bye 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 title sequence at the start of the film, and they somehow managed to make me cry over the Fox X-Men universe in the credits, so they had to have done something right. Up next at number 7 is probably my most controversial pick, that being Ironheart. I don't care what anyone says, this show was genuinely great. The only valid critique I've seen for this series is the one I hold myself, that being that it is way too short. There's rarely any Marvel project that has utilized the 6-episode event format properly, and I definitely think Ironheart suffers from that. The supporting cast doesn't get enough time to be fleshed out, so when there's big moments happening with them at the end of the series, it's kinda hard to care, but it more than makes up for it in pretty much every other aspect because this show is so good. If you've never watched it, I'm telling you, you're not gonna regret it because I love how this series explores the themes of technology versus magic. Whoever came up with the idea of making Riri fight the Hood deserves a raise because I think they have such an interesting dynamic in this show, as Riri is recruited into his merry band of misfits and becomes a criminal stealing from the rich and able to fund her operation. putting her down this path of doing bad things in service of the greater good as she's able to fund her Ironheart armor and eventually try and make it so she's actually able to help people across the world. It's a very interesting take on Legacy as she tries to co-opt the Iron Man aesthetic in order to get attention, as she has to learn some similar lessons that Tony had to. In this fresh perspective we see Legacy from, that is only enhanced with characters like Ezekiel Stane, as he's going through his own legacy crisis at the same time. And I also really enjoy the ethical questions of AI this show poses as Riri's best friend is recreated accidentally. I especially love Riri's character arcs in the show too, as we get to see her not only understand that she never needed money to be a superhero and was able to repurpose her car into a suit of armor, which goes crazy by the way, but I especially adore the tragedy of this series as Riri succumbs to her grief in one of the craziest twists in MCU history and makes a deal with the literal devil himself. It still blows my mind that they did something that bold with this character and makes her so interesting as a flawed and multi-layered superhero. I genuinely hope we get season 2 one day because I think there is so much more to explore with this version of Riri, especially now that they've introduced techno magic into the MCU through her. So you can come at me all you want with this take. I am ready to fight. I absolutely think it deserves this high of a spot on this list. Then at number 6 we have Daredevil Born Again. I don't know how I'm supposed to fit this into 2 minutes. I spent an hour and 15 minutes reviewing Born Again when it first dropped, so I have a lot to say on this show, but rest assured, I really loved it. Born Again famously went through a creative overhaul halfway through filming the original pitch for the series, and I think we're all better off for it because every single change they made this show infinitely better than what it was supposed to be. It is very clearly a Frankenstein of two distinct creative visions mashed together, but I think in spite of that, it turned out as good as it possibly could have. Directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, along with showrunner Dario Scartapane, did an incredible job rehabbing this series to make it feel in line with the Netflix show The Kin before, all while giving it a unique visual style and some incredible camera work. I still can't get over the way they showed Matt's radar sense with the aspect ratio shifting. I think that's the coolest thing ever, along with keeping the continuity of my beloved Netflix series and actually tying them into each other, even if it did mean that they had to kill off Foggy, which I still don't forgive them for, but I'm just glad the rest of the show turned out great. I think on a whole, Born Again has some extremely high highs and some low lows. Particularly the ending of the Muse arc, because I feel like they set him up so well and then dropped the ball in that episode as they didn't reshoot any of it, and I think that was a mistake. But he's apparently returning in season 2, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that we're going to see something better from him there. But that doesn't take away the really great character arcs we got for both Matt and Fisk, as they're treated as two sides of the same coin in this season. I really love the status quo where both of them have tried to step away from being that other side of themselves, and how they each cope and struggle with it in different ways, where Matt is genuinely trying to do what Foggy would have wanted, and it works up until he is forced into a situation where he is pleading with them not to make him violent again, and then once he finally relapses on it, his whole world comes crumbling down around him as all the hard work he's done to build a new life for himself is thrown away once he can't resist the temptation of becoming Daredevil again. And then you have someone like Fisk who never actually quit in the first place, as he's been torturing Adam in his basement the entire time to get his sick fix, letting that rage take control of him as we get towards the finale when he enacts martial law and puts the city into a blackout and going full fascist. And it's all shown to us in the coolest possible way as the powder keg finally explodes in episode 6 of the series when we see Matt and Fisk lashing out, cross-cutting between the two action scenes. I get such an adrenaline rush just thinking about it. God, when this show is hitting, it is untouchable. I don't even have enough time to talk about all the incredible stuff they did reintroducing the Punisher and the trial of the White Tiger, which might be the highlight of the entire season. Hector's heartbreaking death is a brutal reminder that this city needs people like Daredevil out there protecting them. God, I'm just gonna start gushing over the show. I need to control myself because I am obsessed with this series. I am so grateful every day that Marvel made the genius move to reshoot the series and give us new directors. Everything that Benson and Moorhead shot for this season is the absolute highlight of it all. The 2 new episodes they fully reshot at the end of it all are incredible and some of the best Daredevil storytelling we've ever seen in live action. It got me so pumped for what we can expect in the future, especially with how much Charlie has been hyping up this next season. I'm probably a little biased putting Born Again up this high, but as a diehard Daredevil fan, it just made me even more excited about the character and his future in the MCU. So even in spite of its flaws, I will love this season forever. Okay, well, 3 minutes and 30 seconds isn't exactly 2 minutes, so I went a little over my allotted time, but it's better than an hour and 15 minutes, right? Here's when things get serious, as coming in at number 5 is, surprisingly, Agatha All Along. I will be the first to admit that when this show got announced, I was a little confused. I really enjoyed Kathryn Hahn as Agatha in WandaVision because it's Kathryn Hahn. You would have to be the worst person ever to not enjoy Kathryn Hahn in something. But I kept an open mind about it, and God am I glad I did, because this show blew away even my highest expectations. I would go as far as to say that this is the single biggest surprise in Marvel Studios history. What makes Agatha All Along work so well is that it was based off of a very inspired pitch, as we get to see Agatha assemble a coven and travel down the infamous Witch's Road. They're given 9 episodes to play around with this formula, as the series is structured around a new trial every episode, and it gives them a goal to achieve. It feels like an actual serialized television series, and I so greatly appreciate that. Then just when you think the formula might start to get stale or predictable, the series takes a radical twist and flips things completely on its head to keep you guessing. Every character gets time to be fleshed out and made interesting, and it is so intricately written to the point where I think it becomes better on a rewatch. There are tons of little details they sprinkle in throughout that only make sense after you finish the series, and it truly does feel like a spiritual successor to WandaVision, as they gave you this overarching mystery that kept you glued to your screen every week. It was so much fun to watch this show and put together that puzzle in real time. And the fact that it is a musical comedy horror series is just the best thing ever. I am so happy that we got to see them create all these original songs to the show, because they're honestly bangers, and I was listening to them like crazy when the series first started. And it blows my mind that this show was only made for $40 million, because it looks incredible with such a great production design behind it. While the entire cast is great, Kathryn Hahn is just a national treasure. I can't say enough good things about her. She brings so much nuance and depth to Agatha, turning her into this tortured soul of a character, but not really someone who ever gets redeemed, as she's almost the villain of her own show. And I love her relationship with the actual embodiment of death in Aubrey Plaza. Honestly, Aubrey Plaza being death makes it a little more easier to accept the afterlife. Like, it might be worth dying just to see her, you know? That's very morbid, but I stand by it. It is such a layered show that not only pushes forward the MCU in a really exciting way, but takes you down such a clever road with so many twists and turns that keeps you guessing, and is a great example of why people need to give these shows a chance. There are so many lessons Marvel needs to learn from Agatha All Along for the future of MCU television, because I think all of their shows need to be at least this good. Then at number 4, we have X-Men 97. It's on the Multiverse Saga list, so I'm going to include it because, oh my God, this is the definitive X-Men adaptation for me. After suffering through those Fox movies for almost 20 years, I can't tell you how vindicating it was to finally have a mainstream X-Men adaptation do them right like this. Obviously, it is a continuation of the beloved X-Men animated series from the 90s, but given the fact that it's been almost 30 years since that show aired, the times and the technology have changed, and it's allowed them to do a lot more innovative stuff with the medium. Most notably in the animation style, I think there have been leaps and bounds of improvement, but also in the subject matter, as now they're no longer bound to the restrictions of television and can tackle more adult themes, as we can see Magneto talk about the Holocaust, and see his character tackle heavy political themes in some of the best speeches we've ever seen in any X-Men media. That speech Magneto gives before the council still gives me chills to this day. I went into this expecting it to be a fun continuation of a Saturday morning cartoon, but instead, they decided to knock it out of the park with a show that is nostalgia done right, kind of baiting audiences in with the familiar and then turning it on its head when Genosha falls. The show takes a complete tonal shift and delivers on some of the most exciting stuff we've ever seen for the X-Men. I love all the different character dynamics we get to see, from the Rogue Magneto Gambit love triangle. I had to take a second to pause there because I remember what happened to Gambit and I'm still mourning, okay? But also we get some really interesting stuff between characters like Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Madeline Pryor. I owe X-Men 97 my life for finally showing people that Cyclops is him. They put him front and center in this series and made sure to put the world on notice, reminding them exactly who the he is. That's the leader of the X-Men right there. An incredibly horny and complicated character, and I adore him. And listen, Scott, buddy, if you're having trouble, you can take Jean, and I will be happy to take Madeline Pryor off your hands. But on the topic of Jean, I also love that this show doesn't have her as the Phoenix, and we actually get to see her become her own character. It feels like so often she's just reduced to the Phoenix, and now we actually get to see a version of Jean who is dealing with the moral implications of having your own clone out there, all while raising a son. God, it's so good. This show is everything I needed it to be and more. It's not only a series that finally does the X-Men right, but it's also one that anyone can watch regardless of their familiarity with the original series and the X-Men in general. It is such a great jumping on point point for people who want to get into the X-Men. And I think that's because they nailed the three aspects of X-Men storytelling, that being the civil rights allegory, the soap opera drama, and the coolest superhero fight scenes you've ever seen in your entire life. I wish Jake Schreier the best of luck handling the X-Men in live action, because that is not an envious position to fill after this series set the standard for how good an X-Men adaptation can be. It is a truly excellent series that will stand the test of time, and I cannot wait for more people to discover it. Coming in at number 3, we have Thunderbolts * The New Avengers. It's nice to finally say that one out loud now, and I am rubbing my hands together now that I can get to talk about this movie again because I've not been able to stop thinking about this over the last 3 months. It is easily the most human film in the entire MCU. They had me tearing up and crying several times just from how well they handled those themes of loneliness. The team dynamic is so strong that you can't help but just feel for them. I'm very glad that this movie took a very different direction with the Thunderbolts and brought together a lot of the MCU's outcasts and misfits, because they took a chance on these characters that a lot of people didn't really care about and were directionless in the MCU, and not only turned them into some of the most relatable superheroes of all time, but brought them together in such an emotional and cathartic film, and finally was able to give them a purpose together. The chemistry between the entire cast is so authentic and earned throughout the course of the movie as they grow closer and closer together, but it goes without saying that Florence Pugh and Lewis Pullman are huge standouts in the film. Florence is such a movie star, man. We are so lucky to have her playing Yelena in the MCU, and also so enthusiastic to be playing this role. She's able to effortlessly walk the line between charming and depressing for Yelena, and turned her into one of the most interesting characters in the MCU. And Lewis Pullman's take on Bob is fascinating, as he's doing such a great performance as he plays all three facets of the character, Bob, the Sentry, and the Void, differently. And the fact that they turned the Void into a metaphor for bipolar depression is such a beautiful idea and makes this character a lot easier to resonate with. Bob's story is one of tragedy, and I love that he gets to have this moment of acceptance at the end of the film and doesn't have to change, as he's just able to find people that love him for who he is. I'm gonna get choked up talking about it. I love this movie. And I am in love with how this movie was shot. Jake Schreier and cinematographer Andrew Droz Palermo cooked. You can absolutely tell they went out of their way to make this movie as practically as possible, which is always appreciated. There's a standout sense of tangibility in this movie, and it makes the entire thing feel so much more real and grounded, all while telling the story with a unique visual style that stands out and matches the tone of the movie really well. And come on, you think I'm gonna mention Thunderbolts without bringing up the fact that this movie brought Ghost back to me after 7 agonizing years without her? I love Ava Starr as a character so much, and I am so grateful that we got to see her return in this way. Finally finding a family after years of isolation, and now a member of the Avengers, which is some insane setup for the future of the MCU, but I cannot wait to see how this movie bleeds into Doomsday. Before Thunderbolts came out, I was not really looking forward to that film, and this movie single-handedly upped the excitement for me and made it something that I am genuinely looking forward to now. Thunderbolts is exactly the kind of movie that the MCU needed right now. An emotional, character-driven story that broadens the universe in a really refreshing way, and does really creative things we haven't seen before in the genre. The fact that the power of friendship unironically saves the day in this movie and is completely earned and had me tearing up is a testament to how good the writing of this film is. There is such an inspired vision behind this movie, and is one I'm going to continue to think about for a long time. At number 2, we have Loki Season 2. I have the biggest smile on my face right now getting to talk about this for the first time ever on the channel, because this is, without question, the best Marvel Studios series of all time, and it isn't even close. This season is a miracle. I thought that season 1 was a masterpiece, but this was somehow even better and completely blew my mind. I am still processing that finale as we speak. It's no secret that most Marvel shows don't know how to use the 6-episode event, but the reason I'm able to say most is because Loki is the exception. This is the best utilization we will ever see for a 6-episode miniseries. The overall pacing and structure of the show is flawless, as they don't try and overstuff it with too many ideas that you can't pay off in the finale. There is one goal everyone is trying to achieve that is told in one story that fleshed out characters all have something to do with, as they are constantly answering your questions while proposing new ones in a layered story that plays with time and the multiverse in some incredibly exciting ways. You throw in a jaw-dropping cliffhanger ending at the end of every episode that keeps you wanting more, and you have a recipe for success on your hands. There is no wasted second in this show, as at every single moment, they are doing the coolest possible thing that they can. I really love the central debate of this season, as we see Loki and Sylvie debate if it's better to burn something down and start over, or to reform it and make necessary changes. It is such a fascinating idea, made better by the fact that both characters are coming from a valid place. What I think is so ballsy about this season, though, is that they spend 4 episodes trying to build this time loom, doing everything they can to make sure they're able to funnel all these erratic time streams into one singular timeline to make sure that it doesn't erupt into multiversal chaos. The stakes are well established and tense throughout the season, and then when you finally get to that big moment, we get the massive subversion of the loom exploding and time collapsing in on itself. It is such an insane choice to spend 2/3 of this show building up to something only for it to fail and then have 2 episodes to try and resolve that in a satisfying way, and boy do they ever. And thankfully it doesn't involve horny Miss Minutes, because I did not enjoy that. That still haunts me at night. Every time I blink, I see that picture of her on the mannequin. Oh god, it's on screen right now. Oh, okay, get away, get away. No. I need to move away from that and talk about Loki's character arc now, because good god, man. What an ending for him in this show. Starting out as a character who gave himself this fake glorious purpose he had to live out, only to now get to this point where he is actually burdened with the glorious purpose of saving everyone. After spending actual millennias learning how to control his new time powers, ascending to a higher plane of existence and becoming the god of stories he was always meant to be, making the ultimate sacrifice of isolation, embracing his biggest fears in order of the greater good, and becoming the hero Thor always knew he could have been, creating a cloak out of time itself and bending multiple universes to his whim as he becomes a living tree, holding together the entire multiverse. It is so cool and is exactly the kind of thing I love to see in the MCU, as we get these heightened sci-fi elements blended with the superhero genre to give us insane visuals like this. That finale alone is the best payoff I've ever seen in the superhero genre, as Loki finally does things for everybody rather than himself. I think about that shot of Mobius letting time pass every single day. It is so poignant seeing him with this newfound sense of freedom for once in his life, not knowing what to do with it. I hope we never see him again, because that is the best ambiguous ending I've ever seen. And it is made even better with my favorite soundtrack of all time by Natalie Holt. I listen to History Is Now at least 5 times a week, and I'm not even joking. It is my go-to song to lock in. I've never heard a better soundtrack in my entire life. She was working miracles with that orchestra. I'm shocked the room didn't catch on fire from how good their music was. Season 2 of Loki is perfect in every single way and gave closure to a character that had been in the MCU for 12 years up to that point, as it made its mark in the history books as one of the definitive best superhero shows of all time. One of these days I'm going to need to make a full video talking about Loki Season 2, because I've talked about this for way too long, and this is only number 2. And finally, that brings us to number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, my second favorite MCU project of all time. I was openly crying 3 different times when watching it in the theater, and to this day, I still can't get through it without shedding a tear. Full disclosure, I just rewatched a few scenes from the movie to take notes, and it made me cry, so I was just bawling my eyes out a few minutes ago, so forgive me if this section is a little more emotionally charged than the others, but yeah, it's safe to say I really love this movie a lot. It is very important to me, and a movie that will always have a very special place in my heart. At the time Volume 3 released, the Guardians of the Galaxy were my favorite superhero team in live action, so I was both looking forward to this so I could see them again, and also dreading it because I didn't want to be without them. And I firmly believe that with the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it cemented this as the single greatest trilogy of all time. Not just in the superhero genre, this is my favorite trilogy ever. And Volume 3 is, without a doubt, my favorite of the Guardians movies. This is an absolute masterpiece, and a movie that I could talk about for a long time. James Gunn had an insanely daunting task trying to wrap this all up in an emotionally satisfying way, especially with how long we had to wait for it when the gun was jammed. But when it finally released, from the moment that Creep needle drop hit, I knew that we were in for an all-timer, and it just kept getting better from there. This is such a beautiful film about kindness and accepting imperfection, and one that has resonated with me in so many important important ways, but perhaps nothing bigger than Rocket's story in the movie, as he is promoted to the main character of the film after James Gunn basically turned him into the secret protagonist of the franchise. He now gets to take center stage as we explore his trauma with the High Evolutionary. Oh man, seeing his history with Lila Florentifs is really hard to watch. Seeing this adorable little creature being emotionally and physically abused and tortured as this pet project, and basically taking away his own bodily autonomy to the fact where he didn't even want to accept himself. I think it's really cool that after the first two movies pretty much had the universe at stake, Volume 3 grounds things emotionally and has it so the entire point of the movie is to just save Rocket's life. We had 9 years up to that point with Rocket Raccoon, and we were able to grow and love him. So those stakes feel much more real and serious than anything else we've had to see in the franchise up to this point. And because of that, it's so touching to see the Guardians all come together and be unanimously on the same page, getting into motion just to save Rocket and do whatever it takes to make sure their friend lives a long, prosperous life. That moment when Rocket is ready to put his life behind him and embrace the afterlife with Lila, he's pushed back into reality, into the warm embrace of Quill and Groot. I'm getting choked up now. I gotta talk about this without crying. It is such a beautiful moment and really satisfying to see a character like Rocket, who was the most miserable creature in the universe for so long, finally grow and change as a character into this mature friend. But I don't know if there's anything else in this movie that gets me more than Rocket finally seeing the little baby raccoons and realizing that he is a raccoon. Just the look on his face and seeing him embrace them all and try and save them all. And the moment where he finally says his name is Rocket Raccoon pays off in the most satisfying way as he destroys the High Evolutionary with the Guardians. And by the way, High Evolutionary is probably a top 5 MCU villain. Chukwudi Iwuji gives such a menacing performance as this jealous, cold, and calculating villain. Someone who is just pure evil because he sees himself above everyone else. The scene when he yells out, "There is no God, that's why I had to step in," is one of the coldest lines in the entire superhero genre and sums up his character perfectly as someone who has developed this God complex over the years of experimenting on people. And it turns him into such a threatening character in this movie. I hated him so much that I was ready to jump through the screen and kill him myself. But if that story wasn't emotional enough, we also had the subplot between Quill and Gamora, which is also incredibly crushing, as we see Peter holding on to this lost love, hoping to reignite that flame with a version of Gamora who doesn't even remember him. And I think that Gunn making the very powerful decision of not bringing them back together is an incredible choice that made me appreciate their relationship even more. This is a story about lost love and moving on, and it shows a great level of maturity for someone like Peter Quill to come to terms with the fact that his Gamora is gone and there's nothing he can do about it. That final scene between them is soul-crushing, as she leaves him with just a simple, "I bet we were fun," and you can just see all the memories flooding back into Peter Quill's head, just letting out this quiet, "you wouldn't believe it." Oh man, it hurts so good is the best way I would describe it. That lost love is so incredibly powerful, but brings with it this overall sense of closure that I think the movie does a great job at handling. I was convinced going to this movie that we were going to see big characters get killed off, and I have never been more relieved that Gunn did the opposite and kept all of the Guardians alive. For example, I thought Drax was a goner in this movie for sure, but Gunn does something really subversive and keeps him and all the other Guardians alive, giving them new purposes to live on and fulfill. Sure, killing them off would have raised the stakes, but it comes at the cost of cutting off their character arcs. Every single character in the movie gets an immensely beautiful send-off with a real sense of finality and closure, to the point where if we never see the Guardians of the Galaxy again, I would honestly be okay with it. I do selfishly hope we get Volume 4 down the line because there's so much more we can do with these characters, but this was such a satisfying conclusion for the franchise that I'm content. I went on a little too long there talking about things that make me cry, so I kind of forgot to naturally slide this in earlier, and because of that, I'm just going to talk about it now. My hot take is that this might be my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. This is more my kind of music, so I was immediately attached to it, and I think that they have so many bangers in here. From Creep, to Crazy on You, to San Francisco. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which is one of Gunn's best needle drops in probably my favorite MCU fight scene. And especially Dog Days Are Over coming in the film's closing scene. I cannot listen to that song the same way anymore without getting emotional. Guardians movies usually open with that big dancing scene, but they hold off on it until the very end of this movie, so it feels like a proper cathartic release of emotion. I'm genuinely at a loss for words to describe just how emotionally impactful that final scene is. It's without a doubt one of the best endings to any movie I've ever seen. This is a movie that means a lot to me and is one of the absolute highest points the MCU will ever hit. I have never cried more watching a movie, but I would do anything to experience that crushing sadness again for the first time. I'm so happy that the Guardians got a perfect send-off like this. Alright, that's enough of me getting sappy over a group of a-holes. It's time for what you've all been waiting for when I rank every single phase of the MCU. I'm so indecisive and figured I'd have a very hard time trying to actually rank these phases based on what I like the most, so I've decided to do this mathematically. I've taken all my ratings for every single MCU project and found the average rating for each phase, and we'll be ranking them by that. That way it kind of takes the power of choice out of my hands. So here we go. At the bottom we have Phase 1 with an average of 3.75 stars for 6 projects. Then Phase 5 with a 3.84 star rating for 16 projects, followed by Phase 2 with an average of 4.0 stars for 6 projects. Then after that we have Phase 4 with an average of 4.08 stars for 18 projects, just sneaking ahead. And then finally we have Phase 3 with an average of 4.27 stars with 11 projects. So there we have it. That is every single phase of the MCU ranked by sheer quality. I honestly expected Phase 4 to take first place, but I'm not going to complain. Phase 3 was awesome. So, what did we learn here today? Besides the fact that I have questionable taste and will be torn apart in the comments for it. Phase 5 of the MCU was all over the place. For every Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, there was a secret invasion. Phase 5 was an unfortunate inevitability with how Marvel was being forced to pump out more movies and shows than they could keep up with. The bubble finally burst, and you could really see that in the varying quality of everything they were putting out. There were some really bright spots, but there were a lot of projects that should have been better. A lot of missed opportunities and a very rough start. By the end, I think they found their footing, as Disney finally allowed them to take their foot off the gas and slow down to the pace they're used to. Overall though, the highs balance out the lows and make it all worthwhile. I do think it was pretty good. And going forward into the future of the MCU, I think we're only going to see the quality continue to improve more and more. Or we'll just be stuck in a hellscape of Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom forever. Who's to say? But why don't you let me know down below what you thought about Phase 5? I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'm gonna get scroll powers and then I'm gonna grow that weird little Drax arm and I'm gonna punch you with it. So just subscribe or you're getting punched with the weird CGI Drax arm.